tall order to try to keep this inquiry from being written off as just political antics.
Our panel this afternoon, BuzzFeed congressional reporter Kate Nocera, Executive Director of Color of Change, Rashad Robinson, Purple Strategies pollster, Margie O'Maro, and political correspondent for the National Journal, Alex Seitz-Wald. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to start with you, Kate. So here's my question about this. If they are so concerned about legitimacy, why don't they establish fair rules? Like, why not have, if it's going to be 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats, and let the Democrats have the same rights and privileges as the Republicans?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I do think that John Boehner and the leadership actually really want Democrats to participate in order to make this seem like a fairer committee. I also think that their conference actually just won't let them do that. I mean, the committee's already set up. Everything's already baked in. At this point, any deal he's going to make with Pelosi about the rules is going to be a handshake. And Democrats are going to kind of have to trust that that's what's going to end up happening. Why he doesn't go do that, I mean, they point to precedent. They point to previous select committees that were, when Democrats were in the majority, they had more members. And so, you know, I don't think that's going to shift, but I do think Democrats want to see some more fairness around subpoenas, around what happens when witnesses come in, and the guarantee that they'll be able to interview.
You know, that is always the thing that's sort of tit for tat. Like, be careful how you treat people when it's your hearing in committee, because when you're on the other side, you're going to basically you'll get screwed. Alex, here's the thing, though. This past week, they basically failed to land any punches, as one headline said, with Obamacare, right? I mean, they heard from insurance companies that actually said, no, things are actually pretty good. So that's why it strikes me that this has really shifted. Since Obamacare is not working, now it's all about Benghazi.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were counting on riding Obamacare all the way to the election, and that sort of hasn't really worked out, as Obamacare has recovered to a large degree. So I think what this is about, they serve a similar role in that they both help to nationalize an election. This is something that Congress can be doing when Congress is not doing anything else. It serves as a base mobilization tactic. So, you know, you hate Obamacare, you hate healthcare.gov, now just sub in Benghazi, and it all speaks to the same larger idea that the administration is corrupt, that Democrats are hiding the truth for you. So they sort of serve a similar purpose in that same way. You get the positive message from the individual candidates, and you get the negative base mobilization from the national party in Washington.
And yet, Margie, there's fundraising going on. There is, and not just fundraising. You can, you know, as we pointed out, you can buy all kinds of Benghazi items. Who knows?
Benghazi clothes for my toddler,
There you go.
Benghazi onesies for all your friends. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't begrudge campaigns or campaign committees from fundraising, using whatever they have to do to fundraise. Certainly when you work in politics, you know the fundraising people say, I don't care what kind of hit you're going to take, we want to raise as much money as we can. But the fact that this works as well as it does, that they've decided this is what we're willing to expose ourselves here, is because it's such a base consolidating issue. It's an issue that is just going to be a proxy for, are you upset with President Obama? Here's an issue to focus your attention on. And that's why it's worked so well in the fundraising, and that's why they're going to continue to do it.
But, you know, Rashad, it does strike me that, you know, so publicly you've got, you know, the Trey Gowdy saying we shouldn't be fundraising, and you've got other members kind of avoiding the question and sort of saying that they shouldn't be fundraising off of this. But if they wanted it to stop, they could make it stop. I mean, it's not like the NRCC is not directly connected to the Republican members of Congress.
They could make it stop tomorrow. This is absolutely what the other folks have said. It's about base mobilization. But for the Democrats, right, strategically for the left, this is also an opportunity for base mobilization. We have seen how attacks on Obama have really turned out and spurred the rising American electorate, black folks in particular, black women who will be needed in this election if Democrats hope to hold on to the Senate. And in particular, we saw in 2012 with the Pew Research and others, why people waited on long lines, why people turned out was because of these attacks on President Obama that folks felt were unfair. How this gets turned around and flipped on its head to ensure that the American public realizes how Republicans are using our tax dollars and not really concentrating on the real issues facing all of us.
I want to play some sound, Kate, from Mr. Gowdy earlier this morning, in trying to sort of flip this back around on Democrats, crying hypocrisy. Let's take a listen.
The duplicity and the hypocrisy of Democrats all of a sudden conclude that certain things are above politics. They raised money on Sandy Hook. They raised money on Katrina. They raised money on Iraq and Afghanistan.
I think that's not quite the right comparison.
I think he is pointing to outside groups and different groups. You know, that they do raise money. They do. That these tragedies, talking about politicizing tragedies, I mean, everyone does it. Democrats do it. Republicans do it. The thing with Gowdy is that he does, if you talk to Democrats in Congress, they actually believe that Gowdy is a legit player and that he actually does believe that Republicans should not fundraise off of this. And I think there's a split in Republicans over whether or not they should be doing that or not. I mean, Boehner very pointedly would not answer questions the other day at a press conference like, do you think that the NRCC should be doing this? And he would not answer it. And I think that was really telling.
But I do agree, you know, Alex, I do think it opens the Republicans up to criticism that they are politicizing it, particularly when, as we saw this week, one of the family members, actually, of one of the people who was killed in Benghazi, actually said, we don't want you to do this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big danger for them here, and Trey Gowdy said that this morning on Fox News. And there's precedent here. Dan Burton, who was the oversight chairman under Clinton, famously shot a watermelon or a pumpkin, we're not really sure what it is, and it just looked like a total clown, and that completely undermined his credibility and hurt the Republicans in November. And I think actually part of what's going on here, among many reasons why Boehner wanted to create the Select Committee, is to pull this away from Darrell Issa, who has been somewhat embarrassing on this front, if not quite shooting pumpkins, and give it to somebody, you know, a former federal prosecutor who's widely respected by Democrats, and to try to rein it in a little bit and put a little bit more of an adult in the room.
So I want to point out, it's interesting, we were looking at some of the editorials and some of the coverage, and Waynesboro, Virginia editorial said, quote, if this becomes an excuse to criticize Democrats and try to win votes, just shut it down now. It's disrespectful to the families of those 4 men who died to use an investigation into their deaths as a way to raise money for a political campaign. If there's no actual case here, then it's also a waste of time. And that's in Augusta County, where Romney won by 70%, Obama got 28%. Margie, I mean, point being, this, like I say, it's such as the New York Times, right? This is conservative areas of the country saying, questioning the legitimacy of this.
I think no matter how they fine-tune the proceedings here, you're still going to have a lot of voters saying, are you really fighting for me up there, or are you just doing more partisan bickering? And when they see this kind of squabbling, it doesn't matter, you know, what rules they set for how the committee's going to go, or the tone of this guy versus that guy if he walks back the comment. It doesn't really matter. They're going to say, look, this is the least productive Congress ever, and here's what you're spending your time on. And that's something that they really need to worry about.
And I hope they will, actually. All right, the panel will be back with me next.